Hey YouTube, we are back again this week for another video portion of the Daly Dose Sports Podcast. Hope everyone out there is doing well. Hope you're all staying healthy. Hope you're all getting the vaccine and feeling great and getting back to life as normal. This week on The Dose, college basketball has seen a number of very interesting stories. We need to talk a little bit about some news stories that are coming out that don't make a whole lot of sense. And we need to discuss some of the inequality going on between the men's and the women's NCAA basketball tournament. Might be getting controversial this week. Let's jump into that right now. A couple other items coming out in college hoops this week. After getting the Texas Longhorns to the NCAA tournament, and by finally winning the Big 12, Shaka Smart, he once again failed to win a single game as his Texas Longhorns were upset by Abilene Christian in the opening round of the tournament. So now Shaka Smart, who is, by the way, a Wisconsin native, has announced he is heading to Milwaukee to coach Marquette instead. You know, the more I watch these college coaching jobs, the more I'm kind of looking at them and saying, unless you're like Nick Saban, and I know everyone likes to think they're Nick Saban, but unless you're truly Nick Saban, Mike Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, the more I watch these situations, the more I think the second-tier jobs are better than the top ones. I mean, think about this. Where would you rather be as far as your job? Loyola Chicago or University of Illinois? I think I'd rather be at Loyola. Would you rather be at Abilene Christian or would you rather be at Texas? Again, I think I'd rather take the Abilene Christian job. I get that the bigger schools give you those big fat checks, but the expectations at so many of those big schools, they are so ridiculous that it's just a matter of time before you end up getting fired and getting no checks. Whereas at the smaller schools, they are happy to have you. And so you can have some growing pains. I know someone's going to take that Texas job, and I get it because it's big money. But I'm telling you right now, I don't even think I'd want it. I understand why Shaka Smart is going to go back to a little bit smaller of a school. He's going to go to Marquette. Don't get me wrong, Marquette is still big-time basketball, but I don't know that Marquette has the expectations that the Texas Longhorns do, because Texas has huge expectations. They gave Shaka like 5 or 6 seasons. He's made it to the tournament. He still hasn't won a game. And they had pretty much had enough of him. Now, I realize he wanted to go somewhere else, but I have a feeling they were encouraging him to go somewhere else along the way. I'm telling you, I don't know if these big jobs are all that they are cracked up to be. We did have a horrible story come out in college hoops last week when tragedy struck at Grand Canyon University just days after the school took part in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. Standout player Oscar Fryer died in a car accident in Northern California last week. The school put out a release on the passing of the 23-year-old basketball player. 2 others also passed away in the accident, Fryer's older sister, Andrea Moore, and a third person in their vehicle. Now, Grand Canyon had lost to Iowa 86-74 in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and Fryer, a senior guard forward kind of player, he played pretty well. He scored 8 points. He had 5 assists. He had 3 blocks. But here is an interesting aspect to this story. And first and foremost, all the thoughts in the world to all the people involved in this accident. That is a horrible, horrible tragedy. But I want to look at one other aspect to this. I saw this story last week on ESPN. And here's what the headline said. Grand Canyon basketball player dies just days after tournament. Dies? That doesn't seem like a real accurate headline. Wouldn't the more appropriate headline be Grand Canyon player dies in car accident days after tournament? But instead, ESPN chose to keep it a little more vague. Because let's all be real clear. Let's be real honest. They just might get people to think that this was what? Maybe a COVID death? And I know you might hear that and go, come on, Clint, what are you talking about? Stop throwing out the conspiracies. Hold on one second, because this isn't the first time ESPN has done this. Back in December, Florida Gators forward Keontae Johnson collapsed during a game against Florida State. And ESPN was very quick to speculate that this was probably caused by COVID because Johnson had COVID. In fact, there was a panel discussion about it on College Game Day. 2 months later, ESPN quietly released an article where University of Florida health physicians had consulted with other local and national experts who had reviewed the imaging and testing related to this case. And the unanimous conclusion by all the experts is that Keontae Johnson's medical emergency was not related to or a result of previous or current COVID diagnosis. Now, there was no panel on College Game Day to say they had gotten that wrong. There was no big retraction. Look, I realize that this era enjoys capitalizing on fear in the news media and fear in the sports news media, but make no mistake, this is wrong. This is leading. This is clickbait. I encourage everyone out there, pass it forward. Stop clicking and watching this garbage. Because ESPN and a lot of these news networks, they are trying to manipulate us. And until we stop consuming it, it's going to continue. Finally, speaking of manipulation, we have some big news in March Madness because it turns out that the budget for the men's basketball tournament was almost double the budget for the women's basketball tournament. That was back in 2019, the last time that we had a full tournament with fans in attendance and everything. It seems, according again to some sports networks out there, that the men's tournament got $28 million to play with, while the women's tournament only got $19 million. Hey kids, we have clear evidence that the NCAA tournament is biased specifically against female. Hey, as a former high school basketball coach, I can tell you, I coached both boys and girls, and I have seen firsthand, sometimes the guys got better stuff than the girls did. The guys got priority over the girls. The guys a lot of times got the big gym, and the girls didn't get the big gym. We have seen just recently the differences in what the NCAA has given the women as opposed to the men. Hey, we all saw the Twitter video. We saw what the men's weight room looked like, and then we saw what the women's weight room looked like. There is a discrepancy, kids, and it's that simple. Except for one thing. There's one other small note here that we do need to make sure we get on the table. It seems that after that 2019 tournament, they went ahead and they calculated all the numbers, and it seems that the men's tournament earned a revenue of $864.6 million. It's not bad. $900 million bucks? That's a little bit of money. On the other side, the women's tournament lost $2.8 million. Wait a second. Now, I know we just want to look at the two columns and we're going to say men got this, women got this. And I understand that. We look at those two columns and we say, this is wrong. This is inequitable. You are biased one side over the other side. But this is a little more nuanced than that. Let me ask you this, Daily Dose listener. I want you to go ahead and think about this. I've got a question for you. Think about it and come up with an answer. What is San Francisco 49ers offensive tackle Trent Williams worth? Well, he just signed a 6-year deal for almost $140 million. Okay, let me ask you this question now. How much would you be willing to pay the top female offensive tackle right now? Well, that's not fair, right? I mean, there's nothing comparable, right? Yeah, you see what I'm saying? There's nuance. We can't just say the females deserve exactly the same as what the males get. One tournament is making money, $900 million, and one tournament is losing money. And I know what a lot of people think when they hear that. Well, what? Is this just all about money? Yeah, it's a business. And like any business, it's sort of all about money. Because if you work for a business that doesn't make money, I've got some bad news for you. It's not going to be a business much longer. I understand there is sometimes disparity between the men's and the women's game, but you can't compare these two and act like it's apples to apples. It isn't. It's not even close. And I know a lot of times in this era, we're easily offended and we want to jump on some sort of cause like this. It's just that it doesn't really make that much sense when you actually look at the realistic numbers. Okay, YouTube, make sure that you go over and you check out the rest of the podcast today. This week on The Dose, the Final Four is now set. We are taking a look at the matchups over there. What could we expect for Championship Monday this next week? Plus, the NBA trade deadline was last week. We saw a ton of moves. We actually have some good news for some teams involved, and we have some bad news for some of those same exact teams. Plus, we have a Daly Dose Top 5 for you today. We have seen a number of upsets in March Madness this year, and we pretty much see them every single year. Well, we are breaking down exactly how those upsets happen in our Daly Dose Top 5. So make sure you go out and you check out the rest of the podcast. I will leave a link here in the comments for you on YouTube. Hope you all are doing well. Hope you're all staying healthy. Hope you're enjoying March Madness and the NCAA tournament in general. Hey, it's starting to get to be spring. Going to be going outside a lot more very, very soon, and I think that's a very good thing. I will see you all next Wednesday. Have a great week.